The Scottish Government's new Minister for Independence, Jamie Hepburn, has reiterated that Scotland has a mandate to hold a referendum on independence because the SNP has won every election since 2011. Speaking to Martin earlier, Mr Hepburn said the SNP had stood on a platform to advance independence. Let's get the reaction of the Labour MP for Edinburgh South, Ian Murray. Good morning to you, Mr Murray.
Good morning, Fiona. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good to have you with us. What do you make of what Jamie Hepburn said?
Well, I just think it's the same old story over and over again, and the public, the Scottish public, will not be very amused that during the worst cost of living crisis in history, and with a general election around the corner, with their opportunity to transform the country, the SNP are reverting to type and talking about independence.
Well, they have won a no overall majority for independence, supporting MSPs for quite some time now. Do they not deserve another referendum?
Well, the bottom line here is that they're generating their own mandate and continually changing the goalposts on this. I think the Scottish public just want their politicians of both governments, whatever colour they are, to work together to resolve the problems that are currently being talked about around the breakfast tables of every single household in Scotland. And that's the cost of living crisis. It's the jobs of the future. It's our public services. And given the state of our public services in Scotland, the state of our economy, and the way in which the Scottish Government have run Scotland for the last 16 years, they should be concentrating on those bread and butter issues and not harping back again, as they always do, to independence. And why we have a very expensive £100,000 a year Minister for Independence when we need everyone's focus on the cost of living crisis is completely beyond my comprehension.
So Sir Keir Starmer says Labour needs to win a significant number of seats in Scotland if he is to be a legitimate Prime Minister for the whole of the UK. What is that significant number?
Well, we're making significant progress, aren't we? And there's no doubt that a pathway to Downing Street has always run through Scotland, and it'll be no different at the next general election. If there's only one seat returned from Scottish Labour, we'd have to win 124 seats across the country, and Keir wants to be the Prime Minister for the whole of the country so he can create a stronger Scotland and a much better Britain. That's his proposition.
So what's the number?
Positive policy platform. Well, we don't put numbers on these things. The polls are looking
You must have a
very
target,
positive
though.
in Scotland and across the UK, and we've won some very good by-elections recently. We did very well in the local elections in Scotland last year. So we'll be fighting for every single.
You must have a number, though.
Significant gains.
Parties do have numbers. They have target seats. What's your target seats?
Of course, we have target seats, and I don't think it would be too difficult for people to work out what those target seats would be given
20,
the current polls
30?
and where we are. And if you just look at the current polls and the analysis, we'll be fighting for every vote. But you know, the world's our oyster, and I think we've got a very positive programme to put to people.
So more than 20?
We're able to do that on the doorsteps. We'll take that forward from there.
More than 20?
I'm not going to put a number on it, but
why not?
You know, the public can see pretty clearly from the polls that we could win a significant number of seats, and we'll be concentrating on making sure we can win every vote right across the country to be able to deliver those.
Why
seats.
won't you put a number on it? Why won't you put a number on it? You must have a target number.
Well, I don't think it's really important to put a number on it. The polls at the moment show we could win a significant number of seats. We're concentrating on winning every single vote on the doorstep, putting that positive policy platform in front of people, and hoping that people then come across to Labour to get rid of this rancid.
But no number.
But also to deliver a really strong Scotland and a much more reformed and better Britain. That's what we're trying to achieve, and that's what we'll be doing going forward.
How do you build a bridge for yes supporters to vote for Labour?
Well, by talking about the issues that are important to them, the priorities of Scottish voters at the moment are the cost of living crisis, are the jobs of the future, reforming and improving our public services. Those are the big top priorities in every single analysis and poll that is done. It's what people tell us on the doorsteps day in, day out. It's what people tell me in my constituency surgeries day in, day out. So sticking to the solutions of those big issues that are the priorities of Scottish people is the way to get not just yes voters across to vote for Labour, but also to get every other voter across to vote for Labour, because those are the priorities, and that's what we want to try and achieve.
So last week, Sir Keir said he wanted to renegotiate the Brexit agreement with the EU. What does he want to change exactly?
Well, there is a renegotiation that happens with the EU in 2025. That's part of the current trade and cooperation agreement. And what Keir wants to do is to deepen and strengthen our trading relationships in both goods and services with the EU. He wants to make sure we can resolve some of the issues that are causing the trade and cooperation agreement not to work for the country. He wants to make sure we can resolve our short-term and our longer-term workforce issues. He wants to make sure that things like Erasmus and Horizon can be resolved. So this would be a negotiation in the national interest for the UK and making making sure we can rebuild those tattered relationships with the EU that have been completely demolished by this current government.
All right, well, appreciate your time this morning. That's Scottish Labour's only MP for Edinburgh South, Ian Murray.